for a long time, the way the powers that be have tried to manage the fallout from Epstein is depending on what partisan box you are in, you will either talk about Trump and Epstein, or you will talk about Clinton and Epstein. And not enough people talk about both or try and understand what's really going on with the whole scandal and trying to figure out what it really teaches us and shows. Because Epstein, as I've noted before, really is it comes down to middle management. He's managing portfolios for powerful people. He was doing that in the 80s and late 70s at Bear Stearns, and then he was doing that for Leslie Wexner and a lot of these other people that he became involved with, including, doing financial stuff for Netanyahu, having connections to Ehud Barak. A lot of these don't, like the Netanyahu tie, never gets covered.
In this explosive interview, Whitney Webb reveals the real connections between Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump, and why both parties are terrified of the truth. Webb lays out how Trump's business empire was tied to mobsters, blackmail, and intelligence networks, and how Clinton's White House welcomed Epstein 17 times in the 1990s, a story Republicans refuse to touch. This isn't just a scandal about sex trafficking. It's about a bipartisan oligarchy protecting itself. Webb traces the financial and political web that keeps the Epstein files sealed, and shows why real accountability is impossible within the current system. If you want the facts that mainstream media and both parties won't discuss, watch now.
So Epstein was alleged to have created the Clinton Global Initiative or been part of a group that came up with the idea for it. Because, mainstream media will talk about Epstein's connection to Clinton philanthropy, because obviously that's post-presidency when all of that happens. And of course, the Clinton Global has connections also with Terramar, trying to get that promoted and what have you. But also, as I'll be noting in the second part of my current series, someone who's very close to Trump and very affiliated and is part of the current administration also had a major involvement with Terramar and the UN stuff and this weird economic passport scheme involving Chinagate people. And all sorts of very weird things. And his wife was on the flight logs while underage, among other things. So, again, you don't want to go too into certain things because, as is the case with many things in the Epstein scandal, if you pull on a thread too far, it unravels and shows that this is a bipartisan issue and that we're run by corrupt oligarchs and their flunkies. And, I think for a long time, the way the powers that be have tried to manage the fallout from Epstein is depending on what partisan box you are in, you will either talk about Trump and Epstein, or you will talk about Clinton and Epstein. And not enough people talk about both or try and understand what's really going on with the whole scandal and trying to figure out what it really teaches us and shows. Because Epstein, as I've noted before, really is it comes down to middle management. He's managing portfolios for powerful people. He was doing that in the 80s and late 70s at Bear Stearns, and then he was doing that for Leslie Wexner and a lot of these other people that he became involved with, including, doing financial stuff for Netanyahu, having connections to Ehud Barak. A lot of these don't, like the Netanyahu tie, never gets covered. Only Ehud Barak, and actually Netanyahu used it as a lot of political attacks against Barak, and I think the last election where Barak was at one point a contender. Lots of important people attended it. Well, Robert Maxwell had a role in Iran-Contra, who in that capacity was working for Israeli military intelligence. And during Iran-Contra, the head of Israeli military intelligence, head of Amman, was Ehud Barak. I think it's interesting that right now there's a lot of efforts, I think, to manage the discussion about the Epstein scandal. A lot of people that have been rolled out in high-profile interviews weren't interviewed about Epstein before now. Mike Benz, who previously had an online alter ego named Frame Game, where he was trying to, I guess, allegedly saying anti-Semitic things and other things to fight anti-Semitism covertly or something. It's a strange phenomenon. People should look into it. And then he also worked for the State Department under Trump, which is interesting. And then Sagar Enjeti, former, for several years, fellow at the Hudson Institute. Other fellows include Nikki Haley, William Barr, Mike Pompeo, some well-connected figures. It's interesting. And then Daryl Cooper is on Tucker and tries to attribute my book to someone else who has never written a book. It's very strange. But I think a lot of the people that are being promoted don't really talk about the bipartisan nature, leave certain things out. A lot of them, if they're in arguing about the intelligence ties, are trying to keep it just Epstein and Israel, or trying to keep it like in a very specific box. And, my book has come up in some of these discussions, but it's kind of frustrating to me because I feel like a lot of people that have brought it up aren't reading it, because it's very clear that this is a transnational issue that has developed, from the 40s, arguably a little bit earlier, on. And what I'm trying to get people to focus on is that this is not a power structure we can vote our way out of. And that, Trump, Clinton, Epstein, they have a lot of the same people pulling their strings at the end of the day.
They go to a lot of the same
Obama too,
Christmas
as I
parties.
mentioned earlier. Yeah. So, we're not going to vote our way out of the problems we're having. And if people don't realize that it's oligarchs really running everything, and that this is a us versus them thing, we are going to get pushed into this insane technocratic society that is being built for us by people that hung out with Jeffrey Epstein, like Peter Thiel. And really, Palantir does what Epstein used to do. I argue this at the end of the book. Because in the past, sex blackmailing was necessary, but now it's not, because they can find out everything about you from your online life and activities, sucking all the data up about you that has been put on the internet or through your phone or whatever. And Palantir collates all of that on behalf of all 18 U.S. intelligence agencies. And it's problematic. Among other things.
Whitney Webb details how both parties have a vested interest in managing the Epstein fallout for their own protection. While the press fixates on Trump's or Clinton's post-presidency connections to Epstein, neither side will address the real story: the criminal and intelligence networks that run through the highest levels of U.S. power. Webb explains how the mega-group's influence, blackmail, and financial crimes have shaped both parties, and why America's oligarchy is determined to keep the full truth buried.
Personally, for me, I just think it's important to let people, I also like the research I do. It's like, I don't know, so much online is just like slop, like AI slop now. And I feel like there's a lack of original reporting, and I like researching. So I feel really lucky to be able to do this. But also, like, when you're a parent and like where this is going, and like in our lifetimes as adults, what we are likely to experience in the next few years, you want to fight for a better world for the little people, and you have to inform other people. Like, this isn't something just one of us can fight alone. And it's very important, I think, that I try and use my, platform or interviews or whatever to urge people to develop something parallel to what the oligarchs have done. So if we spend all our time and energy and activism and all of that on electoral politics, on this circus clown show, we're not spending any time building a parallel economic structure or something that will give us resilience at the local level. Because if anything, there's lots of things that get repeated in cycles, right? Ever since these oligarchs have been in charge. And one of those things is wealth transfers. They happen every so often. There's a crisis that they engineer and create. And then the government response is to take regular people's money. And that is likely to happen again, especially now that the Stablecoin Act has passed Congress. We are going to get a digital dollar. You may think stablecoins are better than a CBDC, but they are just as bad. Especially if what you're worried about with the CBDC is programmability, surveillability, seizability. Do you think JP Morgan is not going to censor you and steal your money and all this stuff, or PayPal with their stable coin? If anyone remembers from the COVID era, PayPal debanked many people. JP Morgan also debanked people. And there was no recourse there. So it's not necessarily better to give that kind of control over to a private entity. Okay, so it's not the Fed, but it's JP Morgan and all of these banks that, took your taxpayer money in 2008. But if you're familiar, with how the Fed came to be, and it was these entrenched banking dynasties taking control of monetary policy in the United States. What better way? I mean, the Fed, for them, when they did that, it was the middleman between them and the government. But now what we're doing is that we're taking out the middleman with what's happening now. So expect an effort to wealth transfer. And it's not like, I mean, if you think Trump isn't going to facilitate the bankers' designs, I would urge you to investigate some of Trump's history or what the monetary policy his administration did during COVID, the going direct reset, which was basically fleece everyone that's not in the top few percent of the country. And a lot of people don't even know that happened. But if you're familiar, if you'd like to know more, you can go to Catherine Austin Fitz's Solari report or look at the work of John Titus on this. It's very well documented and very bad. And it was designed by BlackRock, who used to be Trump's former, Larry Fink used to be Trump's former money manager. And of course, once BlackRock got involved in the Bitcoin ETF business, Bitcoin culture started a slow decline from being anti-state and libertarian to being, we love the government. And we love stable coins, and we love buying U.S. government debt, and all this madness. So, it's very important to develop economic resilience, and we can do that at the local level and stop empowering these people. I think one of the reasons too why Israel invested so much time and money and effort, covert and overt, in challenging the BDS movement, boycott, divest, sanctions. Economic boycotts are powerful, and we can boycott the oligarchs. And if we're spending all of our time on vote for team red and blue and all of that, we're never going to be able to do anything that extricates us from their power. And the more we get pushed into the digital age, the more dependent we become on them for everything. And people need to really seriously think about how we avoid, basically becoming so dependent that we have no choice to basically be little better than slaves to these people at some point. Well, I didn't find U2 involvement in it, but when I was looking into Naomi Campbell, yeah, I don't know if they actually married, but they were, I think, engaged or in a very serious relationship. But I ended up not really including that in the piece because I focused more on Briatore because I find him to be very interesting. Though I did talk about another one of Naomi Campbell's serious relationships, who is forget his first name, but Vlad Doronian or something. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry about that. I know how to write it, obviously, but I don't know how to say it. Sorry. But he was basically put on the map by Mark Rich, who was a fugitive from the U.S. for some time, a well-known by now and confirmed Mossad asset, commodities trader, mainly oil trader, that created Glencore, which of course Glencore is now very much controlled by the Rothschild family. So interesting overlap there. To
watch the full interview, check the link in the description. Whitney Webb's research makes it clear. If we want real accountability for Epstein's crimes and those of the people he worked for, it won't come from either major party. Only public pressure, independent journalism, and local action can challenge the entrenched power structure. Subscribe, share your thoughts, and join the movement for real change. SIM swap fraud is sweeping the globe, and your mobile security is at risk. Switch to Ifani and lock out SIM swap fraud and get the most elite mobile protection in the world. Ifani guarantees 100% protection from SIM swaps, backed by a $5 million insurance policy. Stay secure with reliable coverage, free international roaming, and unlimited data. Trust Ifani to keep your communications and assets secure. Get military-grade protection, 24/7 concierge service, and a hassle-free upgrade. Click the link below for $150 off. Thanks for watching. Help support this channel and receive exclusive offers from one of our partners located in the description. We'll see you on the next one.